This is the Moshpit Backstage podcast for punk, metal and rock interviews and segments.
Hey, this is Simon from Instrumental Adjective. You're listening to the Moshpit on Sin.
Simon Dawes is a guitarist for Sydney prog band Instrumental Adjective, who'll be releasing their debut Reductio at Absurdum on March 13th. Simon, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure to be with you, man. Thanks for having us.
You're very, very welcome. Now let's draw it back a bit. How did the band start?
Long time ago, far too long time ago. It would have been about 2010, I think, when our drummer Chris and I caught up at a gig. We've been mates for years. I couldn't even tell you how long. We'd caught up after a while of not seeing each other, and he said, "Hey man, I've got these stupid sounding ideas. I think they were from uni even." And I thought he meant like maybe just some beats, but he actually meant he'd written out some, ideas, harmonic movement and stuff like that, a 12-tone row. So he sent me some stuff, and I was stoked because, he's a drummer that we'd all looked up to for so long. So being invited to work with him, so I quickly learned that, and we started jamming on these really, really bent ideas. And then I started going, well, I've sort of been working on this. I've got a couple of these tricks up my sleeve. What do you think of this? So basically it was just sort of two dudes getting into a room with a very minimal amount of material, but just this idea. And then I think we were both at this place where we just wanted to push each other, ourselves, and push each other. So the formation of the band basically came about as like just two dudes going, hey, that's kind of hard to play. Wouldn't it be funny if we added this to it, or if we did this, or if we changed this just to make it even harder? That's basically been modus operandi since day one, man.
And how did Simon Groves, your bassist, get involved?
Oh, dude, I have known Simo since primary school. I used to give him guitar lessons for a very short period of time before he went on to uni. He has subsequently given me some bass lessons, so that's kind of cool. And we're getting to a point where it's like, yeah, we should probably start thinking about gigging, or at least expanding the lineup. And I suggested Simo immediately because I had worked with him previously. He'd recorded a band that I was in, and just hanging with him, knowing him for so long, knowing what he was interested in, and knowing what his playing style was like, I was just like, he's going to be perfect for it. He's going to be perfect for it. We've got to get him in. And I think something like 4 years later, we finally actually made that happen. And he's been the boy ever since, man. He's the man.
Before I forget, what is a 12-tone row? I've seen that referenced a couple of times. I assume it's a musical term?
If I'm allowed to get a little bit nerdy on your program at the moment, basically there are 12 different notes on, a piano, on a guitar, on any instrument, from our culture anyway. 12 different notes. 7 of those notes will sound good, or at least compatible. And the other 5 generally will sound pretty hideous in context there. So a 12-tone row is where you're forced to use all 12 notes without repeating one. Like, you can't use a note again until you've used all of the others. So by forcing that level of dissonance into your music, you're kind of forced to, if you want to kind of find new ways of creating something that is actually consonant, if that makes sense, like something that sounds good.
No, that's really interesting. So it's sort of, you sorry, I'm just imagining in my head, you're playing some notes, they're sounding good, and then like, here comes a bad one.
Pretty much, man. I remember when Chris had written that, and when he showed it to me, and I was like, dude, like, it sounds cool on its own, but how am I meant to, how do I add chords to this that'll still work with it and sound harmonically pleasing to a human being's ear? And all of these, these little puzzles that you sort of get presented with, that's basically, for me, that's what a 12-tone row is. That's what it provides to me, is a real challenge where you're forced to do something horrible and forced from that to create something nice out of that.
You credit your friend Chris Kearns for the inspiration for the band's name. What's the story behind that?
Man, Chris... All right, so Chris, our drummer, was in a band with Chris Kearns called Fat Guy Wears Mystic Wolf Shirt, one of the most intense, mathy grind bands out of Sydney over the last, I think, something like 7 or 8 years. It was super full on. They had a track called Instrumental, which from memory doesn't... I think it does have lyrics. I actually can't remember, but, you know, Chris, as in drummer Chris, was just like, guys, we need a band name, we need to start gigging, we need to do all this stuff. And so, you know, go, hit us with your suggestions. And I am not that guy. I'm just like, here's a bunch of stupid musical ideas. I'm going to go and practice for 20 years to be half competent at them. When it comes to booking gigs, when it comes to band names, when it comes to any of that stuff, I was just like, nah, I'm out. I've got nothing. So he just went with instrumental and said, use adjective. It seemed to work, it seemed to fit, and naturally, given the relationship that we all have as mates, the vocalist of Fat Guy, the other Chris, was just like, what are you doing? You can't steal this. This is a song title that I came up with. You can't use it as a band name. You guys are assholes. And so it's been just one of those long-running jokes ever since. Like, he's totally cool with it. But, yeah, so it just felt like an appropriate jab for Chris to cop a bit of a serve in our album credit list. Really? Because we're just lovely guys. We're totally not malfunctioning human beings at all. Right?
It's funny that you mentioned that. If bands couldn't use the song titles from other bands, I think a lot of bands would have struggled throughout history.
It'd be sick. There'd be a bunch of really pissed off dudes, though. What more could you want? No, look, it's... It just is what it is, and we're all good mates, and it's all just harmless, annoying fun, all done in jest. Just absolutely had to commit it to the digital space, though.
Now let's talk a little bit about the album. You released your EP back in 2015. When did you start working on material for this?
Good question. The first single that we just dropped, Yours, we finished that pretty shortly after the first EP got released. That it almost could have made it on, but it just would have been rushed and it wouldn't have felt appropriate to put it there. The second track of this album is, God, man, we were working on that before. You know, I think I wrote the introduction to it in about 2010. So a lot of this stuff's been kicking around for a while. Basically, once we got the EP done, out of the way, we took a pretty short look at what we had and just went, let's just get back into the studio and keep writing. And so I think it was late 2015, and I think we wrapped up writing very late 2016.
So what was the process between 2016 and sort of when you finished working on it, when it was all done?
Oh, man, basically, between our schedules, it's pretty hard to get anything done. So there was, I think, over that Christmas and New Year's break from 2015 to 16, I think we were writing a fair bit there in a studio that we just sort of booked out for ourselves for like 2 weeks or something. Kept writing when we could, squashing that in around, we teach music, so trying to fit that in. Simo's pretty busy with a lot of production work, so quite often it's just me and Chris. I think it would have been February 18 of last year when we tracked the drums, and it just took this long to get the guitars and the bass done.
Oh, fair enough. Having only listened to one song of the album, the Yours, which was released a little while ago, it sort of seemed to have kind of a looser feel, less sort of sharp attacking guitars. Now, is that more broadly representative of the album? And do you reckon my characterization is sort of accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I really wanted. In terms of performance and production of that particular track, that is really important to us, that it comes across as less in your face. I mean, musically, we can still see that it's pretty over the top, but we wanted it to sound nice, for lack of a better term. So we're sort of changing things up. We don't want to be a real guitar-oriented heavy or metal band. So that was a really, really deliberate choice. It sort of represents a bit of the album in that the production style is totally... Simo's stepped up big time since the last one. Over the last few years, he's done so much amazing stuff. In terms of songwriting, it's definitely the nicest song we've got. I think the other two on this particular EP are kind of more, I guess you'd say accelerated, not in terms of tempo, but just following some of what we've established with A Series of Disagreements. We've just sort of jumped down further into those rabbit holes. So there's more chaotic stuff, there's more sporadic jump cut sort of stuff, there's more, the heavier song is even heavier than whatever it is on the first EP. So it's kind of hard to really pick one thing that represents us. We just felt that Yours was, more than anything, it was just the first thing that we wanted to say, really. So we weren't too concerned with representing or saying, here's what to expect. It was more, you've heard a bunch of stuff already, here's what we want you to hear now, and then the rest of the EP is going to follow soon as we can get it done anyway.
Now, what was it coming out of, those couple of years since A Series of Disagreements? Was it any experience, any change of mind that sort of made you think, actually, we want this to be produced and sort of sound in a different kind of way? Yeah. Basically, A Series of Disagreements took way too long to write. Life happens. We've moved towns, relationships, family members passing away. Life happens. And so really by the time that we put that out, or by the time that we agreed to commit ourselves to recording it, there was most of the drive behind it was, this has to be finished or there's no point doing it anymore. Because we were, jamming regularly, and it just feels after a while like you're throwing money down an endless hole on, studio time and all that sort of stuff. So the drive there was just finish it so that you've got something. And for me personally, I actually spent a couple of weeks or maybe even a month or so just sort of thinking, you know what? Cool, we did it. We got it out of our systems. I don't really think I have anything else to say, so maybe that's it. But the material just keeps clawing at the back of your mind and you have to keep doing it. So I think it certainly helped that we received such a positive response. It's a small response, but it was just so enthusiastic. That really made me sort of go, oh, actually, yeah, this is worth doing. I mean, it's never going to be something you can make a living out of, but it's more having your efforts acknowledged, I think. So that immediate sort of aftermath of the EP coming out after so long, that was a really kind of an inspiring thing that sort of surged us, made us sort of go, yeah, you should keep doing this, and you should do it better. You should aim higher, more production stuff, more over-the-top stuff, just more concepts, more dumb stuff. Interesting.
Which leads us to where we are now.
Oh, cool. One thing I was really fascinated by with instrumental bands is the fact that it's not just we're playing music and this is a track recorded on the 23rd of March, 2016 or something like that. It's got a title. Now, for you guys, what's the process for titling a song, and what does that title mean to you?
Might be giving away too much, but basically, given our horrendously bad senses of humour, most of the song titles are somehow related to the concept of the song, and they're usually going to be a pun. So, Fibonacci is... The song itself is based on the Fibonacci sequence. Rhythmically, it's going 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're not breaking any, setting the world on fire there. I think Tool did that in 2000 or something. But that's where the title came from. Series of Disagreements was the 12-tone row. 12-tone rows are often referred to as serial music, so that's where that gets its title. With Yours, which is in 13, I was trying to figure out what to title that, even just a working title, and I learned through my research, very brief research nonetheless, but I learned that 13 translates in, I want to say, it's Hindi. It translates into the same word that yours translates to in Hindi. And, given the time there where we were feeling very appreciative of the very positive feedback we'd received, it sort of fit. Everything just sort of came into place with that song, where it was like, yeah, this is a thanks, basically. This is definitely being written with a real intent behind it that's yours, that we're writing this for the people who've been so kind to us. So the last one that I'd mention would be Panopticon, which is on the new EP, which people are yet to hear. That gets its name. The idea came first. I just thought, hey, that's a really stupid thing to do. I'll turn it into a song, which was basically the design of a panopticon. It's an architectural thing. It's kind of like a hospital or a prison where an observer in the middle of the building can see everyone else inside it, but they can't necessarily see him or her. They don't know that they're being watched. Real mind control sort of stuff. So the idea was, with a panopticon, this central figure can influence or overlook everything that's happening inside the building. I thought, well, what would happen if you have a sequence of notes or rhythms which dictate every other part of the song, whilst themselves never being actually ever heard in the entire song. So basically the core of Panopticon is never actually audible, but it has informed every single other note that happens in the song. So stupid concepts like that just go, yeah, man, let's try this.
That's deep stuff.
Sometimes the title comes first, and then you just write to it, and then sometimes you have, the music's there, and then you're obliged to give it a fitting title that is absolutely stupid.
Yeah. The guy who came up with the Panopticon was one of the English utilitarians, Jeremy Bentham.
That's him, Bentham.
Moving on to some stuff about your live shows. So you sit when you're playing. So where does that come from? And what is your show like when you're sitting? Because it's not something that most people, except obviously a drummer, actually ever does.
Yeah. During the formation of the band, I was going through a massive Robert Fripp worship phase, which I still duck in and out of. For anyone who's not super across that's King Crimson, and well, in this case, King Crimson's guitarist and primary caretaker. He sits when he plays and has a rather imposing, menacing kind of ominous presence. But also, we're just lazy bastards. And the other thing is, this type of music is just so technically demanding that if we were going to be standing to do it, I would literally be standing completely still, looking at my fretboard. We don't have what it takes to Dillinger this, so to speak. I couldn't do this running up and down, jumping off foldbacks and doing all that stuff that's so physically demanding that Dillinger Escape Plan are known for. So it was more just I'm in the habit of sitting in the studio when I'm playing this stuff or writing this stuff or rehearsing this stuff with Chris and with Simo when he could be there. And so when we started gigging, I was just like, yeah, I'm used to this. And Simo naturally was just like, man, if you're sitting, I'm not going to be the only dude standing. So I think he kind of actually made it, just unintentionally made it our thing. But then with the response you get to that, we kind of pretty quickly realised it's actually kind of cool, and we want to hold on to it. People come in and see that you're seated playing this extraordinarily technically demanding stuff, and they don't sort of tune out. They actually go, oh, something's got to be going on here. This looks different, so I don't want to miss whatever it is. So they sort of, stick their noses in a little closer and sort of loom over us trying to inspect what's going on.
You have also been playing some shows with Hashashin, who are artist Catharthus founder Lachlan, his band. How'd you get involved with that?
Oh man, I've known Lachlan since I want to say 2007 or so, maybe even earlier. So we've always sort of been good buddies, although we were living a bit of bit of a way apart for a while. And so when I moved in, finally got back down to Sydney, spent a lot of time. I actually spent a lot of time just crashing on his couch before I'd actually moved back to Sydney. So we have a pretty long-term relationship there. We've jammed so many times just for fun, just as mates hanging out. So basically, Hashashin got to a point where they were touring with a violinist who is absolutely amazing, and she just filled out their sound so nicely. Like, it was the perfect blend. But naturally, when you get someone who's that skilled and just she's so good, she's in such demand that she'd often have to, bail on their shows and say, I'm really sorry, guys, but I can't do this gig, can't do this gig, can't do this gig. So Lachlan was just like, oh, Dawes, you like making sounds and textural sort of playing as well as all the shred stuff. And we need an instrument here just to thicken up the sound a bit. Do you want to do these gigs? We did, I want to say 3 shows last year, and they went really, really surprisingly well. And we recorded, I think, the first one, and that's just been released, as a lot of people are aware, and it sounds really cool. So Lachlan was like, dude, we should tour it, we should celebrate this at least. So they invited me out to do these next few shows as well, just playing, basically playing what we played last year, but for a wider audience. From there, don't know what's going to happen, but pretty open to whatever with those guys because they're just absolute legends. They're all great.
Definitely. I actually played a track off that on last week's show.
It's cool, man. I mean, people have been... Same deal. I think for me, it's just I'm constantly surprised that people are so receptive to this stuff. But then, Lachlan spent so long building up this situation where people know what artist catharsis is, and they know that there's always going to be something that's worth listening to, even if it's not your thing. So for me, I think of instrumental and I just go, why do people listen to this? This is such a punish. It's like the most convoluted. It's like having 3 songs at once. People say, when you're going to release an album, it's like, there's enough material in this EP for an album. Just, it's all happening at a stupidly fast speed. I don't get why people love it. And the same for Hashashin. It's got to be a real niche market. I get why people like it, but it's surprising that people like it so much. But I guess that's the artist catharsis thing, where people have the assurance that whatever is on his label, even if it's not necessarily to your obvious liking, you'll still find something cool in it. So, man, for me, it's like people just being absolute legends and, coming back to it all with such positivity and enthusiasm. So, please continue to play it. Please.
A couple of questions about you personally. When did you first start listening to music?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, man. It's been there forever. My mum was always playing records in the house as far as I remember when I was really little. My old man, I always knew that he played guitar, and he'd sort of bust it out every now and then when we were over to his place. He'd sort of play some flamenco acoustic sort of stuff. He's a mad music fan. My sister played. It's just always been around since forever. The first time, I guess, that I became aware of something, though, was probably Michael Jackson. So that'd be around 97. So it would have been like History and Dangerous, where I was like, that's sick. That's really, really cool.
When you sort of get more into first heavy music, and second, we'll take them in any order, prog music?
Heavy probably came late primary school. And that would have been, I guess, the grunge thing was just sort of breathing its last breath in a really commercial sense then. So I was sort of getting the very end of that. And then Faith No More hit me, and that was amazing. And then Metallica. And then from there on, it's just like, yep, those are my people. So then I spent most of high school absolutely just being the metal guy, but also having a really huge appreciation for really experimental, eclectic sort of stuff like Faith No More and all of the offshoots, so, Mr. Bungle, Secret Chiefs 3, all of that stuff I was absolutely so into. And I guess it would be around like my very late teens or early 20s when I, again, mentioned King Crimson. I discovered those guys, and I was just like, that's more what I'm interested in doing, rather than, sort of playing these brutal riffs. The interplay between the instruments and how incredibly different it was. Even, to this day, there's not much that comes close to a lot of these bands that have sort of kicked down some doors over the last 30 or 40 years. So it was more just, I think it was kind of no longer needing heavy metal in a way. And once you don't really, I sort of stopped being the metal guy, and this is just naturally where I'm at. It's all numbers and polyrhythms and weird, experimental, progressive, strange stuff that sort of gets filtered into this thing that I guess is prog.
And final question, when did you start playing the guitar?
That would be... Oh, man. I think that would be around late 98. Yeah, towards the very end of primary school. Got my first electric for Christmas at the end of primary school going into high school. So, what is that, like 18 years, I think? 19 years? Yeah, 19.
Instrumental, Adjective, will be releasing their debut Reductio at Absurdum on March 13th. Simon, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Dude, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Moshpit Backstage podcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes and Omni. To find out more about the show, go to www.syn.org.au/moshpit. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/moshpitonsyn and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at moshpitsyn. The regular Moshpit radio show broadcasts punk, rock and metal tunes and interviews every Thursday nights on Syn 9.7 on FM and digital radios. Listeners outside of Melbourne, Australia can stream Syn 9.7 online at www.syn.org.au. Thanks to Vintage Ruin for the music.
Hi, this is Tomato from Flash Gun Apocalypse.
Hi, I'm Enid from Girls School.
I am Phoebe Pinnock from Heavenly Axe.
Hey, this is Gary Oldmead of the Misfits.
Hey, this is Kat Sproul from Horizon's Edge, and you're listening to the Moshpit on Syn FM.
Hi, this is Einar from Leopard.
Hi, I'm Virginia Lilly from the band Lily.
This is Raul from 1349.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ali from Beaverhead.
Hey, everybody, this is Charlie Benante with Anthrax, and you are listening to the Moshpit on Syn.